Okay, so what I'd say is kind of there's a bit of time at the end for Q&A, but kind of if as I'm going through it, if there's anything that you don't understand, or if I'm using jargon or anything like that, feel free to just drop something into the chat and I will re-explain it in a better way there. But essentially, Olivia asked me a couple of weeks ago to prepare a marketing session for founders, and I was kind of thinking, what's the best way to approach this? Marketing is kind of such a broad subject and with so many different facets to it. You could easily spend like 3 hours covering one very tiny subject on it. So I tried to take a step back and think about what would be the most valuable bits that I could give to founders who are at all different stages on their startup journeys, operating in all different industries, that would still be generic enough for them to actually get some value out of it. So I kind of reflected on the fact that I've been in marketing now for kind of coming on 13 years, and there's probably a lot of things throughout that time that I've learned that have become kind of standard information for me, but will probably have been learned through either mistakes that I've made or you know, lessons that I've had to learn quite often the hard way throughout that time, that I could share that with you guys. So I've kind of distilled it down into a couple of bits of advice that actually what I hope everyone will get some value out of, and hope will be applicable to anyone, no matter what industry they're in, no matter what stage of the startup they're up to. So essentially over the next hour, I'll give you a bit of background about me, and then go into those bits of advice and things that I've learned throughout my time doing marketing for the various different businesses and startups I've worked on. And then there'll be a little bit of time at the end for a Q&A. And sorry, as Olivia mentioned, this is kind of the first session. So going forward, we'll send out a form after this one. And what my hope is that actually I'll be able to do a bit more of a deeper dive into a couple of specific areas. For example, if you want to know more about email marketing or paid search or something like that, we can cover them in their subsequent sessions. Okay, so my ambition for the next hour is to leave you in a place where you feel more confident and better equipped to engage in marketing discussions to grow your business. Because marketing, it's kind of full of jargon, full of snake oil, full of loads of different kind of terms that make not a lot of sense to not a lot of people. But I'm hoping that kind of you will turn you in the next hour from being in marketing meetings feeling like that to kind of being the Steve Jobs trying to just own it. Okay, so I'll start with giving you a bit of insight about me and my background. So I started marketing sort of coming on 13 years ago, and I started at a business-to-business full-service marketing agency called Gyro over in Manchester. And at the time they were, I think still are to be honest, the world's biggest business-to-business marketing agency. So we worked on a lot of businesses and brands that were huge businesses, international operations, but lots of businesses that you probably never heard of because they are B2B. Selling to other businesses. But I learned a lot there about how big businesses operate and how they get to the top and how they grow their kind of user base when they're at that stage, and their expectations of those types of businesses when they get to that level on how marketing should operate. So how they go about building websites, how they go about launching campaigns and doing all those things. And there was lots of process work that I actually learned during that phase of my career that I still use today. So then the next step for me after that was I was recruited by a really entrepreneurial founder called Philip Jones to join a company called SPL International. And he sold me on his dreams and ambitions for the markets that he was operating in, and how he wanted to disrupt those and launch new products and brands into those fields. And I went, okay, come on, let's go for it. So he recruited me there, and I was tasked with creating several different brands and products and launching them into the market. And I stayed there for almost 8 years or 7.5 years it was, and got some really good experience as we launched and grew those products and brands. So we were involved in hardware products, software, tech products, physical products that were sold through retail. We had an e-commerce site, and I built out that team to manage all of that. So when I joined that business, they were kind of roughly £4 million per year turnover. And whilst I was here, we grew that to kind of £65 million per year turnover. We exited a couple of the brands that we started. So we sold one of them to a retailer who wanted exclusivity of that. And another one we sold to a competitor who just wanted to take us out the market, but still licensed us to produce the product. And eventually I was involved quite heavily in, we sold the business, we sold SPL International as a whole to a company called BSG. So again, I got a lot of good exposure to lots of different industries. We have B2B, B2C, different channel exposure, and preparing businesses as they kind of grew quickly and then preparing them for sale as well. Then roughly 2 years ago, I joined Nova. So my job role at the moment is split probably across three main areas. One being founder recruitment. So I look after a lot of the top of funnel activity that goes on to drive entrepreneurial founders to come and want to start a business with us. Making sure that we're kind of an appealing enough proposition for that and finding out where we find those people who are a good fit to work with Nova. I also work on top of the funnel activity for our investment funds, so making sure that direct investors can find us and come to us and invest their money into Nova. And also I've worked with probably several of the people on this call on the actual startup marketing as well. So I get my hands dirty and get involved in a lot of the different startup marketing activity that we do as a business. So why I thought it was important to include this slide was because I've actually had I'd probably say a broad and diverse mix of experience in marketing throughout my career. But actually, when I reflected on it, when I was putting this presentation together, I thought there's actually a lot of commonality in there. And actually, a lot of the challenges that I've faced along the way throughout all the different roles, throughout all the different industries, all the different channels that we've been operating in, are common. So I think a lot of people who are engaging in marketing make the same mistakes, ones that I've made myself, and come up against the same challenges. So that's why I kind of reflected on that and thought, what are the biggest things that I've learned, and then put them into kind of points that I'll talk through over the next few slides. So I wanted to include the slide as well. I'm quite lucky and fortunate enough that I work with a really talented marketing team here at Nova. So there's kind of 12 of us in this department. And I put this in there purely to the fact is use that expertise. You as founders have access to this expertise by being a Nova founder. So if you kind of find yourself in a position where you're that guy on the first slide, sat thinking, what the hell am I going to do next when it comes to marketing for my business? Ask us, because do you know what I mean? We're here to kind of help you along that journey. So I'll get straight into it. First piece of advice that I wanted to share, and first main learning, I think it's a really important one, is that high NPS products and experiences have lower customer acquisition costs. Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know what NPS is, that's Net Promoter Score. So essentially that you can read that as kind of like the better your customer satisfaction, the lower your customer acquisition costs. Now that kind of seems quite obvious, but what I believe happens is that there's kind of like a disproportionately small amount of time spent by people discussing that fact. And actually, whenever I'm in discussions, because it happens quite often where our acquisition costs are looking quite high, what could we do to lower them? I think everyone's knee-jerk instinct is to go, okay, we're running Facebook ads, let's test some different targeting on that, or let's target a different geography for that. And actually, a disproportionately small amount of people will think of word of mouth, because actually voluntary word of mouth is the #1 determinant factor for viral growth. If you can get people to voluntarily tell other people about how good your business is, you've nailed it, essentially, because they turn into walking, talking billboards for your business, and they will do your marketing for you. Okay. So there's something I've kind of learned this the hard way throughout kind of my marketing career, but when I've had some success with it, I've dug a little bit deeper into that. And there's something called the Carnot model and excitement attributes that I'll talk about on the next slide, but that I think is really interesting. And I think that every business owner should consider these when thinking about their proposition to their customers. So essentially the Carno model, it kind of looks at each product or business offering is made up of 3 things. And you can see in this graph, it's the graph on the left-hand side there. So there's basic attributes, and that constitutes things like if you're selling a carton of milk, it doesn't leak, or, you know, if you're selling a bottle of beer, you know, it doesn't, they're expected. Okay, if you've got an app, people expect to be able to log into them. No one's going to go and tell their friends about the fact that they were able to log into your app, but actually, if they can't do that, the impact is quite dire, because no one will use your app. People will just delete it. But anyway, as you can see on the curve there, it's kind of, people don't get that excited about it, but actually they're necessary. Then actually the middle arrow there is performance attributes, and as you can see, it moves linearly up and to the right. So these are things that actually most businesses, it takes up the core of their thinking and effort. So if you're launching a phone, these are things that like your engineering team will be obsessing over. So these are the things like, you know, your battery spec, you know, the quality of the camera on your phone, your operating system and stuff like that. And these are the things that everyone will be trying to optimize. Okay, and as you can see, it's good to do those things, because as you increase the quality of those, your customer satisfaction levels also increase in a linear fashion. But what I think is the often overlooked thing is these delight or excitement attributes. This is this arrow on the left hand side there, and what you can see is that they've got a big uptick whereby these are things that are actually outside of your core offering or central product requirements that aren't expected, but when done right can have a huge upturn in customer satisfaction. So there's a couple of examples of these. I'd urge everyone to just Google the Carno model, because there's some really fantastic examples of how businesses have utilized these. Telsa have got a really good way that they're using it at the moment. But the one that I liked and wanted to share was this hotel in Los Angeles called the Magic Castle. So as you can see, they're ranked number 6 out of 385 hotels in Los Angeles. Now, you might be able to tell on the images there, but actually they don't have fancy finishings. They're actually quite a basic hotel. You know, you get a bed, you get a shower, you get all of these things, but actually none of it's that great. You can see the pool here isn't that luxurious. If you go onto TripAdvisor or Booking.com, you can see more about that. But why do they rank so highly out of all of the hotels in Los Angeles? It's because they focus on these key things to improve these delight or excitement attributes. So what you can see in this image on the left here is it's a popsicle hotline. So they've got something whereby if you're sat by the pool, you just pick up this phone and you speak to someone on the other end, and within a couple of minutes, a member of staff will walk through with a tray of lolly ices or ice lollies. Let's not have that debate. And serve them to you as you're sat by the pool. Other things they do, if you get your laundry done with them, they wrap them in paper and tie some string around them, and they handwrite on them, you know, a nice message and put a sprig of lavender in there. Okay, so these are all things that they don't have to do, but they focused on them and thought, okay, what could we actually do to improve our word of mouth and our recommendation, improve our NPS score to a point that they will recruit more customers at a lower cost. Okay, so they're smashing that. So from my own experience, in my last job, we had an e-commerce site, and before I learned about the Carno theory and that it was actually the theory, we came up against this, that we noticed through our website that we were selling brewing products, and we knew that if people bought product A, for example, that without B, that they generally forgotten to add that on into their cart, and they weren't going to be able to brew what they wanted to brew because they'd forgotten that. So we had a couple of options there. We could have either had a pop-up on the website through the CMS that said, hey, did you know you've forgotten this? Would you like to add it to your cart? We could have emailed them after the event to say, hey, did you know that you'd forgotten this? Would you like to come back to the website? With the potential they could have spent more money and added more stuff to the cart. But I pushed for us to go down the third option, which made my life more difficult, but I believe was ultimately one of the best decisions that we made for that brand. And it was to actually add in the product that they'd forgotten free of charge to their order, and add a handwritten note to it, say, hey, look, we noticed that you'd forgotten to add this to your cart. Didn't want to stop you from brewing this weekend. Hope you have a great time. Okay, now what I knew was that it was a kilo of dextrose, so the in cost to us for that was about 45 pence, and to add it in shipping, you could say the whole cost of doing that activity was less than £1 to us. But I know that the actual impact and the value that added to our brand and the value that people got from that, because the thank you messages that we got, the people who shared it on social media, who took a picture of that, and actually people who recommended us to other people, that was the big win for us. People felt as though they owed us something because we'd done that very small gesture, by giving them that small thing that was kind of inconsequential to us, but meant a big deal to them because it was outside of our core offering and we'd gone above and beyond. And that's kind of the essence of this point. So I've kind of talked a little bit about that, but it's really important, this first point. So I would urge you all to think about what you could do to your offering or your customer interaction. It could be a product feature, it could be actually your customer experience or your customer service and how you deal with that. That would encourage people to voluntarily tell other people about your product or business. Because if you can nail that, as the slide says, the higher the NPS score that you get, the lower your acquisition costs are going to be. So if you come up to a point where you're in your business where you're like, geez, Joe, we're getting customers on board, but it's actually quite expensive, and you're thinking, how can you lower that? This could be a good route for you. Okay, next point. The job of the startup marketer is to place multiple bets across a range of different channels. So the best kind of analogy I could think of for this one was to think about, your startup marketer almost like a VC, like a venture capitalist, and how they diversify their own risk. So it's kind of like placing multiple bets. Essentially, before you start out, you don't know which channels are going to work for you and which ones aren't. And even me, who's been doing this for a long time, I can give advice as to which ones I think will work, but until we start testing them, we don't know. So it's our job as a startup marketer to kind of place multiple bets across different channels, with the knowledge that actually it will be one or two of those that actually, what you say, return the fund, a VC would say, but actually deliver all that value back, because 80% of the growth will come from a number of channels. So you've got to test, you've got to do some testing. So I also included the point, avoid being 100% on paid. So there's a massive allure to lean toward paid marketing for you to grow your user base, especially in the early stages. But I would say kind of it's good, and it's a good tactic to test different parts of your business model, but avoid being 100% on it, because it can drive quick growth, but it's equally quite expensive, and it can be easily replicated, and it's therefore less defensible. Okay, so I've included just kind of a snapshot of, this is Nova, and kind of, I'm not saying this is quick or easy to do, but I've been with the business coming on 2 years now, so you can see we've got a split. So we're getting founders coming from organic search, from paid search, from email, from social media, from referrals, and there's further diversification within each of them different channels as well. So for example, on social media, we're on Facebook, we get some from Facebook, we get some from Twitter. So essentially there's good defensibility, because what can happen, essentially, if you're 100% on paid or 100% on one singular channel, you're building on rented ground. Like what we've seen recently, we had one example, the founder of Nerdbox, they were heavily into Google search ads, and Google suddenly changed their advertising policies, and you could no longer advertise for tech repair products. So essentially that they were in a position like, oh Christ, now I can't use the number1 channel that I'm getting all my customers from. I've not tested any other channels. What the hell am I going to do now? And it's blind panic, because they probably hadn't built up yet a good defensibility around their business. Equally, again, look at what's going on with Facebook at the minute. There's kind of tons and tons of businesses and brands boycotting that. I've got one eye on that. Are we going to be in a position in a few weeks where actually you're seen as kind of supporting the enemy if you're advertising on Facebook? Who knows? But thank God I'm not 100% on Facebook at the minute, because I would be really nervous if it was. Okay, so key advice number 3, with few exceptions, Yeah, I'd say with every business I've been involved with that's had good success from marketing, the marketing mix involves a combination of paid and owned media. So for marketers may know these things, but those who don't, paid, as it sounds, that's kind of paid ads, anything that you pay money for to gain exposure or leads. So that's influencers, paid media spots that you might do. Owned media are things that you have full editorial control over. So that's your website, your blog, your social channels, your email list, your podcast. And earned is a really important one because it's more trusted than the other channels. So that's things like PR. If you can get other people speaking about you in a favorable manner, doing interviews, getting your reviews in the face of people, and word of mouth also falls onto that. So when I talked on the last slide about kind of placing bets, or Joe testing multiple different channels like a VC, make sure that you've got coverage around each of those 3 different pots. Okay. The other thing as well to note in these, that actually different channels allow you to learn at different velocities. So how we do it at Nova is I know and it's generally the paid channels allow us to learn really quickly. So if we want to test messaging out, if we've got like a piece of messaging that we want to put out for our brand and think how well will this resonate with our customers, potential customers, we could do that really quickly on the likes of Facebook ads or Google search ads. And then we can utilize those learnings and deploy them into the slower moving channels. For example, if we're doing print ads and print media and stuff like that. So kind of have the awareness that different channels, your learnings will happen at different velocities, and kind of you can use the faster moving ones to test things. And final point on this one is that actually the channel mix for each company that I've ever worked in and each brand that I've ever worked on is inherently different. So whilst it might be important to have one eye on what the competition are doing, you do really have to test for yourself because there's so many variables involved. Every business will be slightly different. So you need to find what works for you. And the best way to do that is to run lean marketing experiments and find out which ones are working, which ones aren't, and then scale those. Okay. Key advice number 4. So look for an equal balance between product and marketing. And that's kind of not just in kind of how you spend budgets, but actually how your focus and your energy and the resource that you're dedicating to each part of your business. I think kind of try and keep that pendulum going kind of at front of mind. And some of the biggest mistakes that I've kind of encountered both at Nova and before Nova were kind of when we focus too much on one side rather than the other. And I think we're kind of, I've been guilty of doing it both ways, actually being overly focused on the product and actually building something and then trying to sell it, which is a harder job for anyone and for any marketer to try and do it after the point, build it and they will come, never really works. And I've also done it the other way where I've actually over focused on marketing and had like the best launch campaign you can ever imagine, but the product was absolutely garbage afterwards. So actually we were getting no repeat customers and nothing afterwards. So I kind of learned the hard way on that. And I would say just kind of urge you all to kind of think, if you've been focused for the past several months on product, what can you do from a marketing point to kind of realign that pendulum? Because actually you should be doing it alongside, not after the product development. Okay, yeah, I just included this nice meme. So kind of offer the same scrutiny to both your product and marketing costs. Now, inherently, marketing will be cheaper than product development, but equally kind of don't be that guy who kind of completely signs off without questioning your product, you know, £50,000 of product costs, and then kind of runs out the runway and has no cash available at all to do any marketing tests. Because as many businesses will fail because they run out of runway before they find market traction and actually get enough customers for it to be a viable business. And as many tests need to happen on the marketing side of the business as well as the product side. So make sure that you're kind of keeping that front of mind and keeping the testing that you're doing on that side as predominant as what you are with the product. Okay, key advice number 5. Okay, so combining multiple channels gives you a greater return on investment than doubling the effort or budget on just one. Okay, so what I mean on this one is that I put A times B is greater than 2A or 2B. I think if you have some success with a marketing channel or a marketing campaign, you might do some Google ads and go, great, this is working fantastically. I want to have, you know, shall we double the budget on that one? Now, I'd say kind of just question yourself on that one before you just jump into throwing more budget at the same channel. Think about what other channels you can add into that mix, because the return on investment is better the more channels that you've got. So there's been multiple studies on this one. But you can see on this graph here, so this is talking about platform, but read platform as channel there. So actually a campaign that's just on one channel, i.e. Facebook ads, will give you a 29% on average return on investment. If you add in another channel, that will increase that by 19%. Okay, add in a third channel, that will go up to 23%. Add in a fourth, 31%, and up to 35%. So if you're in a position where you're like, okay, we've got the early start of a good campaign here, how can we grow it? Don't necessarily reflex to let's add more budget to that same channel. Think about what other channels can you add into that campaign, because the ROI will be better. Okay, that was kind of historically a campaign. Back in my early days, it was always made up of multiple channels. It's only more latterly that we've kind of had a focus on single channel campaigns, but actually the data doesn't lie. Having multiple channels within that campaign is the best route forward for it. Okay, yes, key advice number 6. So again, something that I come across quite a lot, and I've been guilty of in the past, is actually over focusing on the campaign setup rather than the creative. So if you're thinking about launching a marketing campaign, there's tons of different factors what you'll have to consider that, and I'm probably more focused on, if you're thinking about using some paid elements here, there's a tendency to over focus on the campaign setup side of things. So we're in an age now where on kind of Facebook, you can target by absolutely everything, by interest, by job title, by salary range, by location, by everything. So kind of many marketers, many business owners will spend a lot of time agonizing over how to set the campaign up, what bidding strategy they're going to use, and so all of these intricacies of the campaign setup, because 5 years ago they were the most important part. So I'd say 5 years ago, anecdotally, it was probably 60% the success of the campaign came from the campaign setup, and probably 40% of that was down to the creative assets that you used within that. So fast forward 5 years to today's world, and actually the creative, I would say, accounts for 75% of the importance of the success of that campaign. Okay, so as over that 5 year period, I'd say the platforms that we're advertising on have got a lot better and a lot smarter at actually delivering ads to your customers at the right time, in the right places, to the right people automatically. Okay, so whereas we used to have to organize, and I used to download pivot tables from Google Ads and be manipulating all of the data to gain insights and then feed them back into the campaign to try and optimize it. Those things are still important, and the campaign setup probably makes up about a quarter of the importance of what will determine the success for that. But equally, don't overlook the creatives, because what I see happening quite a lot is that actually people will set up, go, right, I want to do some Facebook ads, and get really in depth into the campaign setup and who they're going to target, where they're going to reach them, and then actually just get a stock photo off the internet and just put one line of text with it. Now it's kind of, that doesn't work anymore. Whereas previously you might have had some success with that if your target was really on point. That won't work. You need to kind of focus on the creative elements of this campaign and think, what can we do that's going to stop the thumb? What, when you're scrolling through Facebook, what really is it that's going to cut through? Because the competition's so difficult now. That is what makes the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful campaign. And equally, if you've had a campaign that's performed less successfully than what you'd hoped, everyone's gut instinct or knee-jerk reaction is to go and revisit the target and go, hey, well, Joe, what, I'm going to add a few more interests into there, or I'm going to just slightly change the location settings on that. And I would urge you all as a first point to think about your creatives and if there was more testing that you can do around that. Okay, so essentially what I'm saying, this bit, when you're creating the ads, the video assets, the image assets, the headlines, the copy, whether you're going to use emojis or not, you know, this bit of text, you know, that's the things you should be focused on testing and running split tests on, rather than all of this stuff. This stuff's still really important. Don't overlook it. Don't dismiss it. I'm definitely not saying don't bother with this stuff, because it's important, but it's about 1/4 of the importance of this stuff on the left-hand side. Okay, key advice number 7. So look for a Swiss Army knife for your first marketing hire. So if you guys might be in the position with your business where you've had some success and you're considering, okay, maybe we should hire someone to do our marketing for us. Now with marketing in particular, I think with other industries, I think most marketers have a decision to make quite early on in the career as to whether to go really deep on one of these subjects around here, or actually go broad and actually get a decent understanding and coverage of all of these things. And you'll encounter both. If you put a job advert out for a marketer, you might encounter someone who's done 10 years on Google Ads and is absolutely a whiz on them, and probably better than what I could be on that. But equally, they're not what you want at the early stages of your business. Your first marketing hire are going to be generalists who can take your channels from 0 to 1, who can do all of those testing that I talked about earlier. So I'd say avoid the curse of specialism, because when you're looking for that first hire, if you hire someone who's been doing something for the past 5 or 10 years, they will be inherently biased that is going to be the channel that is going to work for you, because they're going to want to utilize all of those skills that they've learned in the previous roles. Thinking back to how I've scaled things and kind of the hires that I've made, kind of as rule of thumb, I always started off by, I have got a good general knowledge. If you look at my background, I've kind of got a good covering on all of these bases to be able to get brands from 0 to 1 or even 2 or 3. But there's definitely people out there who are better than me at all of these things. So what I would do was I would start by testing different channels for the different brands I was working on. Then if they looked successful and were doing well, I would then outsource them, and actually using agencies who specialize in these things can be a good middle ground. Because, for example, we had an e-commerce brand and Google Ads was doing really well for us, the ones that I'd set up, and we were spending maybe a couple of £1,000 a month on those. And it was taking up quite a lot of my time to manage those campaigns and keep optimizing them and keep ensuring that they were performing well. So I found a good PPC agency, I outsourced it to them, and it was only at a point they continued to scale it incrementally, and we continued to have good success through that channel. And it was only at the point where we were probably spending just in kind of service fees for the marketing agency, so not on the media spend, not in actually the cost per click and all that sorts of stuff. We were probably spending 40 to 50k in just servicing that agency, that I actually thought, okay, we could probably recruit someone at that time for maybe 35k, and there was a benefit to doing that. Okay, so it's only at that point. So I'd say kind of look for generalists, build them up, and it's only when you're kind of doing maybe 5 figures or more in service costs to outsourcing it that you should consider hiring a specialist for any one of those channels. Okay, key advice number 8. Yeah, again, one I've kind of learned the hard way on, but being metrics focused is great, but don't allow the amount of data that you've got access to now to become too inwardly focused, because with kind of as a standard, even if you've just got a website, you've got a whole raft of data and information that's gathering now through Google Analytics and all the other kind of analytics platforms that you might have on there, if you've got Hotjar, etc., etc. All really good, and I'm definitely not saying don't use these things because they're really useful. But actually, in the early stages of your business, they can be crippling to you in terms of your time and resource and how you're spending your time. And what I would say do your best to avoid is actually these hyper targeting rabbit holes. So as I mentioned before, with like the likes of Facebook and Twitter ads and Google ads and stuff like that, you can be super targeted in your approach on those things, and you get data about all of that back. Okay, so kind of if you find yourself kind of 4 hours in studying a campaign that you've spent 500 quid on, going, right, okay, why has my Google search campaign, why has 37% of the budget been used up by males on Android phones in Gloucestershire? Then kind of you're in a hyper targeting rabbit hole. So close your laptop and go for a walk, because you're definitely wasting your time when it comes to that point. For the early stages of your business, I focus on probably a handful of key things: how much I'm spending on that channel, how many clicks I'm getting, how many conversions I'm getting, and the ad performance. So which of the creative assets that I've created are working the best. That's it. If you're going a level deeper than that, there's a couple of things, but actually don't go too much at the early stages. Again, it's probably when you get to that point with your business where you're spending 5 figures per month or per year, on that one channel. That's when the detail becomes important. Before that, don't get bogged down with it. I've done it myself before. So kind of a good example from my background, I'm not embarrassed to share, was that we spent ages developing a website. We launched it. We were looking at the data. We had Hotjar on there. We had Google Analytics set up. We had all the conversion points set up. We were like, right, this is great. We were watching the data as it came in, and the conversion rate, to abbreviate, was lower than what we were anticipating and hoping for. So we probably spent the next 6 months making little refinements based on the data that we were seeing in the back end of analytics and through Hotjar, making changes to button covers and text on the buttons, and actually changing an image here and an image. And we kind of probably over the course of about 6 months improved that conversion rate by about 3%. And we were all, patting ourselves on the back. Oh, that was great, well done. You got the conversion rate there. And it was only when we went out to a trade show that we were doing for that brand, and 5 people kind of came up and independently were like, oh, you guys, you're SBL International, okay, right, and started talking to us, and each of them mentioned the same thing about our website that they found difficult. That we were all very embarrassed going home that evening, because we knew we probably just wasted 6 months of time trying to overly optimize these things based on all the data we had on our hands, when actually if we'd have just gone out and spoke to a few people or watched them use our website, we'd have got the data much quicker and learned a lot faster. Okay, so don't get in the hyper targeting rabbit hole. Okay, and last piece of advice, 9th piece of advice, is that as a startup founder or CEO, you are the startup's most valuable marketing asset. Okay, so the best way to articulate this one is you're passionate enough about your business to have started it. Okay, so who better is there out there to tell its story? Okay, so if you're thinking about doing some press or some press releases, or if people want to interview you, they always want to speak to the founder. Okay, and increasingly a business owner's personal brand is becoming more and more important. So give some thought to how you can build and leverage your own personal brand to benefit your business, because there's some good examples of this that I'll talk through briefly on the next slide. I'm conscious I'm just coming up to 40 minutes. I'm going to leave some time for questions, but essentially this is your passion. This is why you've started this business, and people are more likely to resonate and build a community about you talking about it, rather than kind of your branded marketing page and going out with marketing messages. You as the founder have got a responsibility and can make your marketers' lives a lot easier if you're willing to go out there and actually share what you're working on, share your views and opinions about the industry that you're operating in, what you want to see for that industry, and what is the driving factor as to why you started that business. Okay, so I won't go through all of them, but I've put on here, and I'll share the slides with everyone afterwards. And I would urge you all to just go onto your social media and just follow these guys and watch how they do it. essentially. But these guys are, I would say, are masters in the game of leveraging their own personal brand to benefit their business. Okay, so you might know some of the faces, you might not, but there's kind of a diverse mix across different business types and industries, but they've all really been able to nail going out there as a founder and actually using their own personal brand to benefit their business. So as a, I'll end on this piece of advice, but as a startup founder or CEO, you are the startup's most valuable marketing asset. So if you're going to be doing stuff that's outwardly facing, you should be front and center and involved in that. Okay, so that is it. Bang on, 40 minutes by my watch as well, which is good. So we've got we're on what, quarter to two now. So we've got 15 minutes. I just want a minute or two at the end to kind of cover off how the next sessions will work. But I'm kind of open now. I've allowed roughly 10 minutes for any questions that anyone might have. If anyone wants any more information about some of the things that I've covered there, or anything else marketing related, feel free to shoot away now.
I have a question.
Okay, go on.
Cheers for that. Enjoyed it. So, with regards to the Kano model, how would you go about identifying the basic, the performance, and the delight elements for your business? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so I won't skip back, but essentially the basic elements are kind of, just think about it, kind of basic elements of things that you would expect. So things that your customers are expecting to happen when they're interacting with your product. So again, with Thrift, it might be the app. People expect that they're going to be able to log in. People expect that they're going to be able to, I don't know the product, I apologize, I don't know your product that well because I'm not working on it, but upload a picture of the product and Joe, that will work. Okay, no one's going to get excited particularly about that. So kind of like take those things as a standard. Everything that you're doing now, take that they would fall into either the basic or the performance lines of that graph. What I would encourage you to think about is, what are the other things that you could be doing that probably aren't core to your product offering? So it's not got the ability to add and also upload, or and also share to your social media channels, because they probably fall within a product feature. I'd encourage you to think about what falls outside of those product features that people might not be expecting, but are a really nice bonus to happen. So kind of, I'll try and think of another example. So kind of, I was trying to think of the last time I gave a voluntary word of mouth recommendation. It was, I was at there's a restaurant in Liverpool called Murray, and as I'm doing again, go and use it if you've not before, because it's really good. But it was on my birthday, and I was doing a collection to take home, and they got wind of the fact, because I was having a discussion with a girlfriend at the time that it was my birthday. They from my order, they put in with my order a piece of birthday cake and wrote on the top of it, "Happy birthday, Paul. Hope you have a great day." And when I got home, I opened that up and I was like, wow, okay, that they didn't have to do that. That was a delight attribute that, they've gone above and beyond, and that's not part of their core offer. And they didn't deliver just what I asked for. I got all the food that I ordered, but that was an additional thing. Now, the difficulty with these with the Kano model, and where you might get some pushback, is that actually it's difficult to measure. And that's the challenge that I had with it. When I've tried to utilize it, that generally the finance bods, the accountants and stuff like that will all want to see you've spent this much on marketing, and you can directly link that and this has had this much of an impact on the results that you've had from that. Now, with these types of things, it's really difficult to track and to measure, but that does not mean that you shouldn't do it. We've became, as a kind of marketing generation, obsessed with doing things that we can measure to the minute detail. So I can tell you what per pence my acquisition costs are, but actually, if your business is successful, it doesn't really matter. I reached a point in my last business where we just got to my targets when I was just given a top of funnel budget because I was employing lots of things like this that were actually really difficult to manage. So I was going, okay, you've got this much money and you need to get us this many customers, go and do it. We're not going to get into the detail with you of measuring each specific thing and wanting to see reporting on each of those because it's really difficult, especially when you're thinking about those word of mouth and kind of excitement attributes, features that you can be offering to your business. But those for me have been the biggest things that I've added into my marketing mix have had the biggest impact. So if I'm conscious I've covered 9 points there, and that's quite a lot of information to take in. If you only take one thing away from that today, I'd say spend half an hour, the next half an hour, thinking about what you could do to your business that would encourage people to voluntarily recommend it to other people.
So think of it more as a concept or principle rather than like an analytical piece of work that you've got to measure to the pence. Or
yeah, it's a psychological value which makes it's difficult to measure. People get it's an excitement attribute, so you're not going to be able to say I spent this much giving out popsicles or lolly ices at the pool and it definitely made them recommend 3 people. You can't measure it to that level of detail, but actually that doesn't matter.
Just do good.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers.
Okay, anything else from anyone?
I have a second if no one else wants to.
Go on, cheers.
So it's less about marketing channels, but probably more about where you talked about 75% of like an ad and is around the creative.
Yeah.
I guess with Thrift, what's going to be quite important for us, and I think with a bunch of the other founders' businesses, is the end user having confidence in the accuracy of the result that we give them. And it may be more of a branding question, so apologies, but having been in marketing for multiple brands, how would you suggest we go about communicating the confidence to the user around the accuracy of, say, Thrift without sounding too dry?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. Again, put me on the spot, but how I would probably approach that one was the thing that has worked really well for me in the past, actually. So say if an example might be that you're getting people come to your site or hearing about you, but actually going, I'm not sure that that's going to work, and bouncing off. So one of the big things that has worked fantastically for me is actually retargeting, but with reviews. Okay, so people have been interested enough to come and look at your website or your app on the App Store, and you can then, through kind of the Facebook pixel and retargeting measures, hit them with some customer reviews. Better if they're genuine. If you haven't got them, I won't tell them if you make it up. But actually getting people to see that kind of
always genuine,
that trusted from someone else who's used the product and done that as I've used that for brands before, and it's had a massive uplift in return on investment.
Thank you.
Okay. So, as I said at the top of this, in terms of structuring the next session, I think what would be good is actually I'll send out a survey, either me or Olivia will send it out, and it'll just be ask you 2 questions. What is your biggest marketing challenge at the moment? And 2, what area of marketing would you like to learn more about? And then I'll kind of look for any commonality in the results that I get off that and use that to build out the next sessions that we do. So kind of keep an eye out in your inbox for that coming through. I'll also include the slides for these, and then in the next session we'll do a bit of a deeper dive, and hopefully we'll be able to address some of the specific challenges that you're facing at the minute, and I'll be able to go a bit more in depth on maybe it's something like which channels you use. Maybe it's Google Ads, maybe it's PR, and how you can generate press for your startup, and some of the things like that. I'll be able to do a little bit more of a deeper dive on the things that will be most valuable to you as startup founders. Cool. Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And as you can see, this is a kind of a 101 session that's a precursor to other sessions that will be tailored around your needs. So thanks everyone for coming. Thank you, Paul, for putting it together. And I think we have another session on investment actually next week. So see you all then.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks,
Thank you,
Sylvia.
Paul.
There's no problem. Take care, everyone.
Take care, guys.